magic button and start us recording.
We are recording.
All right. Due to the governor's statewide disaster declaration relating to the COVID-19 pandemic and current public health guidelines for social distancing, I have determined that it is not prudent for the members of the Economic Development Commission or staff to convene in person for this morning's meeting. Therefore, the members of the EDC are attending this meeting by video conference. Those are the same conditions that require barring access to the public for in-person attendance. In light of those limitations, the public is invited to attend and listen to the meeting through Zoom platform or by phone as indicated in the meeting agenda. To comply with the Open Meetings Act requirements for virtual meetings, this morning's meeting is being recorded. We're officially running. So roll call.
Yes, Erwin Steinberg.
Here.
Jay Levin.
Here.
Mina Hall.
Here.
Mike Elliott.
Here.
And Roger.
Here. All right. Minutes of the last meeting. Anybody have any additions or substitutions?
Roger, just a comment. I think the minutes that I was going to follow up on some video with someone, and that wasn't me. I thought Mike said he was going to do that. I'm not sure. It was not me.
That the Anthony De Niro?
Yes.
That action item? Yeah, we already took care of that one.
Okay, so that's done.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other? Okay, can we get a motion to approve the minutes then, please?
As amended.
As amended, yes.
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the minutes are approved and we can roll into the agenda. We've got quite a number of things to talk about this morning. So on the updates, anything happening with the International Council of Shopping Centers?
I just wanted to again point out that I'm going to be preparing a memo concerning the Main Street Lending Program. There were some changes to it that might be beneficial to small businesses, and I'll try to get that out today or tomorrow so we can circulate it. They lowered the threshold from $250,000 to $100,000, and they lowered the fees. And how the PPP loan program, how that is evaluated in terms of your ability to satisfy the requirements for the financing. So I'll try to put something together that is kind of a big initiative by the International Council of Shopping Centers. They're trying to, of course, help with, lobbying for the COVID relief package to come through. That's been an ongoing issue. And again, to help amend this program, this lending program, to make it more available to smaller businesses. So I'll put something together on that.
Roger, could I introduce my thought on? Okay. So I think it was the last board meeting. They approved the audit for the year, a firm called Sikich. And I happen to be working with Sikich on another matter. And they have a very, a website that lists a lot of the new things happening. Main Street, PPP, loan forgiveness, grants. My recommendation is rather than us recreate the wheel, let's have them, since we already have a relationship with them, send us all the new pronouncements and announcements, and let's just post it to our website rather than reinventing the wheel because it's weeks after the fact. And I think that would cut down where this committee can then spend their time on some other efforts. So that's my thought.
Would we just put a link to their website on the EDC page? Is that the idea?
Yeah, or we would just grab what they have and put it on our website.
Well, I could do that. I mean, that was the same idea that we were doing with, it's probably the same information that we're getting from the International Council of Shopping Centers. I mean, it's probably the same thing, but I'd be happy to do that.
Well,
I'm sure
getting
it's the
the
same
information to the
information.
people in the village who could use it is a great idea. You can't get around that.
Yeah. I mean, either we could post the link, or we can just excerpt the data and put it in memo form. Either way.
Okay, well, yeah, maybe,
I mean,
we have a,
my thought, Erwin, unless, if you have a membership, that's fine. I think Long Grove has a membership to the International Council of Shopping Centers, so we could probably just post, their update to all of this.
oh, that would be great. That would be great. Rather than reinventing the wheel, let's use
No, I
something
think
that's put together.
Right. That's a great idea. They have all the information put together, and Long Grove does have a membership with them. So we have approval, I mean, I guess that's always an issue, but we have approval to use that information, and I'll just make sure we post what we're, what our small businesses need.
I like the idea of using experts and giving them credit for their ideas and their
Right.
collection, rather than
Right.
trying to put something of ours up there and also taking on something where maybe we're not as deeply into it as, say, the accountants are. So I really like the idea of talking to people at, is it Sekich?
Sickage, yeah.
Tickets,
And,
yeah.
yeah, and Denise, maybe I don't know who would have the contact, whoever the partner in charge there should talk to us about how we can utilize their research and their talents, and we could link it together, because it would be done timely. If the PPP had a change today, they'd already have a memo on it tomorrow. Most firms do. So let's figure out how we can link that. And I don't know who's to do this is, because I think we should just go through whoever the partner is handling the audit for Long Grove.
I was about to ask Bill if there's Sikich has either a client relations or a public marketing individual that maybe we can be put in touch with and reach out as a client.
Yeah, I mean, we can ask the person that did our audit. So that's what we can do.
Yeah, I can do that if you want me to.
That would be great.
That's whatever you want to do. Jenny, if you want me to, I can.
I'm
We'll
happy.
put it on our follow-up list for the next meeting, see how we make some progress.
Okay, so Jenny, you got that?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. How about the HGL DBA, the Downtown Association? Anything going on there that anybody's heard? That I know they're pumping out a lot of email releases and doing a nice job of promoting the businesses, and they've got the Christmas decorations up, and every time I go through the village, I see a few more people walking around. So I think the improved amenities down there are making a difference, although the weather is not helping.
Does anybody know from sales tax reporting or what kind of volume increases?
That was talked about at the last meeting, and I can't remember. Was it Ann Kritzmeyer who had the report? Can you remember, Jenny?
I can't remember. We're actually not, we're doing pretty well, but I think really Menards and Sunset are kind of doing really
Carrying the ball.
Yeah. But I can't remember the business input, the downtown business particularly. I will say that I went shopping last Friday and I got turned away from 2 stores because there were too many people in the shops.
That's great.
And I talked to a couple of the business owners and they said they've been doing great. So
Well, that's really good. Yeah. I know Jasmine did, when she gave her report to us a meeting or two ago, she told us about that promotion. If you bring in, $150 worth of receipts to the visitor center, there is a a certificate or some additional benefit that's given for local businesses. So that's part of, I know she posted that in her, I think that's posted on the website.
Sounds good.
That's usually a gift that, and I don't know what they're doing this year, that if you spend $150 or whatever it is, you can get a gift. So it's an incentive to get people down there, an extra gift.
Yeah, so I guess the idea is if people just gather their receipts and bring them
I
to
think
the
it's a keg of
visitor
beer
center.
this year.
You do
Yeah,
get
there's
all beer glasses. That's one of the beer glasses, coffee mugs, wine glass.
Yeah, right. There's plenty of opportunities like that. Plenty of toast.
Yeah. All right. How about just bringing everybody up to date on the Restaurant Association, where we're at with talking to them? Pam, maybe you want to fill us in?
Yeah, I guess we're Mike is also working on that, so I'll ask him. But I contacted, when you and I, Roger, contacted the Illinois Restaurant Association over the summer to ask Sam Toya to speak, and he did do a webinar for us. We talked to Matt Quinn. He's the communications director for the IRA, and I asked him if Sam could come to our December meeting or our January meeting. And I don't think at the time I realized that this is our last meeting of the year, right? I think so. And Sam was busy. So, I thought if Matt could actually come and speak with us, but our agenda's full. So we might as well try to get Sam for our January meeting. And I know Mike Sarlito, you're working on that, right?
Right. I got a response from, once Rita identified a couple of people that she knows as well there. She took the lead on trying to reach out to Sam, and we circled back with Ron Lance too. So he kind of handed that off as well. But we talked with both Kevin and Ron at Lake County Partners, so they're aware of what we're trying to do.
And again, so why are we keep pushing? And again, forgive me, maybe I wasn't at the last meeting, right? But why are we pushing this again? Because I'm thinking if I'm Sam, why would I want to come to a meeting where only like 5 people attended last time? So just again, devil's advocate here.
Yeah, the discussion that Pam and I had was, maybe it would make more sense to just get the director of communications in there, because Toya is pretty high profile these days and working at being high profile. So you're right. We don't bring in much of an audience with our meeting.
No, and then again, but what's the benefit other than, again, not very many people join our calls and not very many people seem to view them afterwards. Why are we wasting their time, other than, we can see what they're saying on other interviews that he's been doing across the country, across the state rather, and like in articles in the state. So just trying to save us some hard work or heartache, if nothing else seems to, because this has been on the agenda a couple of times now. And I'm just wondering, like, why are we spinning our wheels on this?
Yeah, I think, maybe it grew out of initially, Mina, we had one meeting where we did talk about outdoor dining and best practices and that type of thing. And I guess the other thing people are interested in is the advocacy that Sam is doing with the state, to make sure, to try to keep restaurants open, frankly. And I think you're right. His information is posted all over. I guess if we could have him at a meeting where people like Mike Marr would attend, and that might be worthwhile. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I agree with you. We should try to have an audience if we do it. There's no point. I think at least a meeting. I wouldn't have a separate try to do a separate webinar again, because there really wasn't enough of an audience there.
In my opinion,
let's see what happens with Rita and with Pam and all that. But I agree that this is certainly not a priority item for the commission.
I agree. I mean, I think if this was a month ago or 2 months ago and we were more timely, like now we're kind of in it or after the fact, that I just feel like we're, we're jumping on the bandwagon too late.
Well, we've got lots of other things to take our attention as well. So let's see what develops with the feelers that are out there. But let's move on to the next item here. The next item, Denise went to a connect to a dynamic Lake County Marketplace webinar, I guess it was. And was
No,
going-
that was actually just the infographic that I was going to be updating
Oh.
information on, which I did update. I just put Jim Hoag's information on there, and we'll have to hold off on adding any information. We had discussed adding TIF information to that, but the fact that it's just a prospective TIF, and so until that is established, we wouldn't add any of that information yet. So that is updated and on the website.
Okay. Sounds good. The video series. This is kind of interesting because it's kind of gone beyond where it started, but it still is something that I think is interesting in terms of putting things on the website, and it's led us to different places. I think I reported last time that the people at 83RV weren't that interested or didn't call back. And I don't know if anybody else has had any inputs on people who would be willing to make the short videos. I got some information back from some people that I know from another board involvement on a video they put together, and they've offered to help to get us into putting something together, possibly as just a do-it-yourself kind of a thing. But at least until the new year starts, I doubt that we're going to get many people to want to break into their schedule now to do video interviews. I'd like to see us continue to look for likely candidates who would be willing to talk about Long Grove as a great place to do business, and
Right.
they're out there.
What has been the number of views?
What is the what?
Number of views of the videos? I mean, are you tracking?
White Oaks one?
Yes.
I don't know. Denise, do you know?
I'd have to go in there and look. We can see, I believe with those, because we have to put them on YouTube, we could see the number of views. I can peek at that right now.
Yeah, my thinking, and this is the result of talking to a couple of people about this. What we're talking about really is a standalone 5-minute or less piece that says Long Grove is great with some decent production values. I've got a professor at College of DuPage who wants to do a project for his class for the coming semester that might be a resource for us. But we're not talking about these long interview things. We're talking about things that are just going to sit up there on the EDC website or wherever that are just quick. You're looking at coming to Long Grove and hear a couple of faces smiling and a little arrow that says, click here to hear about why Long Grove is great. 2 minutes. That's my idea now. I don't know, maybe other people.
So Roger, with that, maybe we should just come up with a short list. We have a couple already. Maybe we should have 3 more names. I think we threw out maybe Sunset Foods at one time. I'm trying to get in touch with Matt Holdings, the company that's located here, a very big international company that's headquartered in Long Grove. And maybe even, what about Long Grove Confectionery? I'm just throwing out some names. So let's get, 5 of them in total, and then we could be done with we'll get the filming and the editing, and then we have something to post, ongoing.
Does anybody have a connection with the Long Grove Confectionery people?
I do.
I can reach out to them.
Okay, Pam, do you know who to talk to there?
Craig
Yes.
Oliva,
Yeah,
you've got Craig's contact info?
I do.
Okay,
Why
yeah,
don't you
sure,
follow
I'll
up on
talk.
that then?
I'll call him up. I was out there about a year ago at the plant, and we talked a lot about Long Grove. in the
They
downtown
came to
area. So
several meetings, so they're,
I
I'll
could
call
talk to
Craig.
Sunset Foods.
Jay, you'll do that? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I talked to, I emailed, I played email tag with Kristen at Flycrest Vet Clinic. She was just getting back from a week and a half trip to Hawaii, so she was a little frazzled. But I'm gonna circle back with her. But that might be another potential.
all right.
Oh, and Jay, I think I had the name wrong of dental. It's Appel Dental, correct?
Oh,
In
it
Sunset?
is. I was wondering where they went. I was wondering where Aspen Dental, which is a franchise operation. I was
Yeah,
wondering
I'm
where
sorry. I think I got the wrong name. I talked to somebody at Appel Dental. I'd be happy to do that when we were doing our initial contact. So yeah, it's Appel Dental, and they're at
Yeah.
Sunset.
Right, and it's two uncles and a nephew. I think that's 3 of them.
Right.
You want me to call them? I can call them.
Would you? I think they're
I know them.
they're a good candidate because they're they're what we're looking for, like a new business that started in Long Grove. So better
Yeah,
than asking.
So maybe what we can do is say, let's get 5 in total. We have a few now. And then we'll get someone to do some editing on this and we should be fine with that. Let's get 3 more. I think we have 2 right now. And then this would be a good accomplishment maybe to get through the first couple of months of 2021. And it would be something that we could point to at the website and say, hey, here's, the goal is, here's some of the business people and why they're here and what the benefits are and how we've helped.
And it's a deliverable for us, so.
Right.
Win-win. Excellent.
I think anything we do, we have to figure out what we want to accomplish and how we measure it.
And as you pointed out last time, Roger, there's a dual benefit to this because it's great marketing and publicity for the respective businesses, as well as for the business community as a whole in Long Grove. I mean, it's helpful for them.
Okay, so it sounds like we're all still on board with this and we just need some more work. Let's go to work.
I did look at the analytics for there was Irwin, your video, the first one has 19 views and the White Oak video has 2 views.
That's a shame. That was a good one. Anyway. So the flow chart.
Did you?
Hi, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Did you see Ann Kritzmeyer's comments? She had some good information, I thought.
I did see those. Thank you for sending us that revised version, Denise, and thank you to Trustee Kritzmeyer for her input. It's greatly appreciated. Mike Cerletto and I had a really good conversation about the flow chart, and he had, as usual, some valuable input, which I need to go back now and take Trustee Kritzmeyer's input and Mike's input, and what I plan to do. I also forgot this is our last meeting of the year, so by the time we get to our first meeting of next year in January, I will have what I'll call a final draft of the flow chart. I'll circulate it ahead of time so people can have one last chance for additions, subtractions, changes. And then hopefully on the agenda for our first meeting in January, everyone will have reviewed the final draft and we can just approve it and start sending it out appropriately.
Have we shared with the Plan Commission?
No, that's going to be one of my steps to do before I circulate it for, final review.
That was something that a couple of trustees, I believe, thought would be worthwhile. So let's keep that on the list as well. That's good. It's my sense of the trustees' reception was that they were basically very positive about it. They were concerned that the content was well done and correct and not misleading. And that's a good thing. But generally speaking, they were like, yeah, this makes sense. I thought, so that's a good thing. We're making progress on that. And you got anything else about the flow chart? Good enough.
Can I? Oh, yeah, go on.
Are we, has anybody heard anything about this idea of a second round of business calls, or is that done with what Denise did the other day?
You know, I never talked to the board about it. I think it got lost after the bridge to business conversation. So I don't know what the board's thoughts are on it. I can ask tonight and then get back to Denise. But I don't know what your thoughts are about it. They seem to respond well to being reached out to, but again, this is a crazy time of year. So I don't know if one more call is not what people want right now. So maybe after the new year would be a better time.
Hey, Pam, when you're typing, can you go on mute?
Sure.
I don't know about everybody else, but I'm hearing a lot of the clatter. Sounds like a horse-drawn sleigh downtown.
That's why she gets such complete minutes.
It's a good thing. Well, yeah, sure.
Trying to create some shortcuts for myself with my
no, it works. Totally. I
with
get
my
it.
ancient equipment.
Thanks.
Yeah. Maybe as a thought, rather than, Jenny, if you bring this up, rather than calling the business owners, what if we sent, and we have a list that we developed last year, maybe we should look at it and add to it, and just send maybe a one page or an email out, an email blast, just saying, here's what the EDC is all about, how we can help you, and what our accomplishments were last year. You know, some of the information, maybe we're going to, go to our website for updated, grants and awards and things like that. We've been working on businesses, why businesses are coming here. We've enhanced our website, just some of the benefits they can get from the EDC. And maybe if we reach out rather than make some calls. So this one, maybe it'll go out to a few hundred businesses rather than trying to call businesses and get some input. Just a thought, what we've accomplished and what our goals are for the next year.
Yeah, I
That
think
makes
that's a
me
great
think that-
idea. I know we with our quarterly newsletter, we've been doing that, but I think some kind of wrap up for year end, Denise, might be just perfect. I think that's a great idea. Just
Has
reminding
the
people
EDC
of
been
what.
doing a quarterly newsletter?
Are you talking about the bridge? Or I didn't know the EDC sent out quarterly.
Well, we've been incorporating what we've been doing in the newsletter.
Oh, okay. So part of the.
Denise, right, Denise?
I think that just happened once, where it was
Okay.
really kind of a quarterly update. I'm not sure that that's what it was called, but there's been a few little updates along the way, but.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, maybe I like your idea though, Erwin. I think a year-end I think that's perfect. To remind people of what we're doing and maybe some of our accomplishments. I think that's great.
Yeah, and we don't have to, just some bullet points, just some bullet points.
If we put on the agenda for next time to review a draft of a broadcast email that says, here's what we're doing, and maybe my thought would be, if you know anybody who's thinking about moving, a little promotion as well. It's like giving a bonus to your customers for bringing in new customers. Well, if we can tell them, bring in people to the village, that wouldn't, anyway. Can we set up to have a draft of an email communication by next meeting? Anybody want to put their hand up and say, I'll get a start on that?
I can do that.
All right, and if anybody has ideas, they can send their ideas to Pam to incorporate. Fair enough? All right, so we got that to look at.
Well, I can work on that, Roger.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is about drone pictures of Long Grove to build content. Bobby O'Reilly saw this and she has a contact already who basically does photography for real estate brokers that would be interested. I think at this point, it's probably more of something to talk to the village about, the board of trustees, because it's something that would involve some expense unless somebody's heard from a volunteer resident.
Yeah, so I had asked about maybe posting something in the little email blast, and that wasn't really well received. So Bobby does have this contact. I was going to reach out and get a price, so at least we kind of knew what sort of investment would be on that. My day got away from me yesterday, so I didn't have a chance, but I can probably get that number today and bring it up tonight if people, if we want to continue pursuing it.
I was thinking that someone might offer to do this just out of the kindness of their own heart, not necessarily for pay, you know, just like a resident of Long Grove wanting to do something nice for the community. I wasn't thinking that, again, it would just be nice to have on the village's website showing like a drive-by of how pretty the downtown area looks all lit up, and like, you know, just kind of the different, like the igloos outside of Corked and, you know, stuff that's going on. I mean, I think that would be beneficial for everyone. And again, I was hoping someone would just do it for free, but oh well.
I'm surprised that I would bet we could find somebody who will do it for free, because people who have those drones with cameras frequently are just looking for reasons to play with. So
does anybody know anybody that has a drone? I have one person that I know, but I know he works like 90 hours a week. He's crazy busy, but I will reach out to him and ask him if he has any desire.
Jenny, my son actually has a drone that we could attach. However, we don't know quite yet how to fly it. It's been a year.
Well, that's like a really good project for him.
Hey, you know, the other thing, Roger, did you mention someone from one of the junior colleges, a professor wanted to have maybe some project
Yes.
for their class? So maybe we could contact, some of the people, we could go outside the village to get someone to do this, and it may be for free, and develop a relationship with that professor.
I think we all like the idea, and yeah, all right. I'll follow up again with this professor. He's just working through his syllabus now, so it's real early times, but I'll do that, and
So
let's see what we can find.
do you want me to just find out what a professional would charge so we know how much of
Yeah.
an ask it is? Because if it's like a $200, you guys do have budget, maybe
Yeah.
not a bad investment. I don't.
Well,
Yeah.
and then maybe ask him also if he'd be willing to do it gratis, just because, we're a public entity and a government entity. So just saying we have a limited budget, so maybe pull on his heartstrings a bit.
Should I ask if he gives lessons to kids about drones?
For sure.
That's what I
And to
was
mom.
thinking. That's a good twofer.
Okay, I'll try to call him today, so I have some information for the board tonight. But I agree. I think we should be able to find somebody that likes to fly their drone. So, okay.
Good.
Roger, if I could interject, Nina and I are working also on creating a demographic data chart with info that would be beneficial for prospective businesses. Just showing certain demographic data for 5, 10, 15-mile radius, as well as Lake County. And I've been working with Lake County partners to get us that data for like Killdeer, Hawthorne Woods, Lincolnshire, Vernon Hills. And Nina's got the expertise to help us put together that a data chart. So we're working on that.
And we may not go into the depths of the 510. I'm still playing around to see what kind of data we have available, again, for free. and trying to incorporate that data in a way that would be useful for future businesses to, to review prior to making a decision on whether or not to put us on the list or take us off the list. So yeah, but Pam's been great about getting us information. So I'm just putting together some Excel documents that we can upload onto our website. We have some stuff on our website on the ED page, but I think we're just going to try to spruce it up a bit.
Yeah, and we've looked at other websites like for Lincolnshire and Libertyville, and just kind of gotten some ideas of what other similarly situated communities in Lake County are doing, but we'll do our own thing, right, Mina?
Are you able to get information which is within a year of the trailing time period, or how far back is that data?
The only data we have available, everything goes back through ESRI, which is basically the tool most economic site selectors and economic development corporations use. But ESRI has demographics that date back to the prior census. Obviously, the new one still hasn't been tabulated. And that's the most up to date until like communities can do more individual, or counties or regions or states even. So, but that is typically what all data is. And then they have prospective projections. All ESRI data models have prospective projections. And, for communities small as ours, those numbers the perspectives aren't that great, aren't that large. But so we have data going back from 2010, projections to 2020, and projections to 2025. We're trying to use not only just, general, very specific, like, residential demographics, and stuff that businesses will be more looking for, and like information. And Jay, if you want to participate on some of that too, because I was trying to also market it more towards commercial/retail focused, and obviously not on other things that may be irrelevant.
For a town the size of Long Grove, how does someone make forward-going projections off of what kind of guesses are you using or data to do that?
So yeah, that's why we have to use, because of our size, we're quite limited in what we can do. So and without buying any of our own data, which again, Lake County partners, because we pay for them, the only data set we can get are just pure demographics, race, population, residential income, median income, just the breakdowns by, different race and different homeowner pricing. So all we can do is, I was going to do Long Grove itself, and then a broader surrounding communities. And again, whether that be by miles or by drive time, and then incorporate all of Lake County, because technically, since we're part of Lake County, to make us look bigger. And if I was trying to incorporate all of Lake County, because depending on where you sit in Long Grove, like for example, I'm on one of the most northern parts of Long Grove. So it only takes me 20-25 minutes to get to Gurnee, which again, by then, that population of 20 minutes will increase we can get on people's radar for a 20-minute drive versus something that was 45 minutes. So that's why if we increase it and extend the radius out further, we don't have data that, I can't buy data right now for something like that. We don't, but the data that we do have, I'm trying to basically collapse and create our own model. So yeah, and Jay, I'd love your input too, because you're doing a lot of retail activity also. So, when I'm done incorporating all of this data, maybe I can send it around. Maybe I'll send it to you and you can take a look.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah. The old days they meet at Starbucks, but that doesn't work anymore.
I know the old days when we were doing tip stuff to you and me, Jay, and Anne. Yeah, for sure. But I'll email it to you, and then I'm just trying to find some time. It's getting busy towards the end of the year, just trying to finish up client work. So I'm trying to find some time to get some data, but I'll send it to you for sure. I think you'd be a very great
It's
resource.
a side issue. Even with all the coming vaccines, it may not work for quite a while. I'm not convinced that we're going to be getting into crowded spaces on a professional basis for my day job quickly. It's still going to take a while with the vaccines.
Well, as long as we can get something up. So, and I'll circulate it around anyway to our team. But I think that would be beneficial for companies that are looking and doing their own site selection, basically.
Thanks.
This all leads us right into what Mina's going to talk about, this whole idea of how how people decide to move places. So Mina,
Thank you. Denise, can I do the screen sharing or oh, I can. Do I have access?
Let's see. Let me look
Yeah, I
and
don't
see
have
if you have
access.
access. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, you should have it now.
Okay, perfect. All right, so just as a preface, so I'm really dumbing this down and I'm really kind of high level overviewing lots of things, and a lot of things may not make sense, and you know, stop me, because again, this is just a primer. So I'll just kind of go through without belaboring certain points, but let's see what we can do and get through. Again, more educationally on kind of what I do on a daily basis and what, you know, my clients typically want. So site selection basically is, you know, you have an entire world to choose from, and what a company's trying to do is basically minimize their risk in any location that they choose for whatever reason that they may be choosing. So I'm going to kind of step through some of those processes. Hold on, I got to see if I can page down. There we go. So what is site selection basically? So again, I mentioned that it is, oh boy, I don't know why. Hold on, I'm trying to get rid of my screen, 1 second. There we go. So basically, you know, we're trying to balance out the initial cost of what, you know, what they're doing with overall the real estate and overall cost of a new project, the initial cost, the overall cost, and then the continued operating expenses that happens once you locate a new facility or an expansion of a facility. And then we're trying to determine what the benefit or the cost is going to be to the community and also to the environment. Again, depending on the type of project it is, the environment sometimes is you know, impacted. So basically, you know, as we all know, the initial costs of all of these are huge. I mean, they're huge capital investments. I mean, you hear about like these $100 million, $1 billion data centers that, you know, the Amazons and the Googles and the Facebooks are doing. So the costs are enormous. So when they're making these decisions, they're trying to minimize the risk on their balance sheets of this initial outlay of huge expense. So some of the considerations companies may use and some of the benefits, and again, this is really like basic and like, it's not everything, but I just wanted to give you a flavor. So sometimes they look because they're trying to reduce their labor costs or reduce their cost of living. Sometimes they're trying to improve their workforce. You know, let's say that they're not getting a good workforce now, or they don't have enough of a workforce that needs a specific type of skill set. So if it's in a manufacturing, you know, something that we always joke about is that we want to come back in our next lives as like welders or CNC machine operators, because anywhere in the country, those are just at a labor shortage. You know, sometimes these companies do these site selections because they want a better quality of life, or they want more amenities, especially with the millennials entering the workforce. It was something that was really more focused on for certain office types of operations, not necessarily manufacturing or heavy industrial or anything like that. You know, most of the times it's because they're trying to do a lower cost of operations, you know, again, either lower rent costs or lower, you know, just cost of labor, like labor in certain regions is cheaper than in other regions. And then some companies will definitely look at their economic development incentives. And this is where I typically work with local economic development commissions or organizations, is because they're the entity that typically helps drive some of the business for more towards the site selection piece. And I can talk a little bit briefly later about incentives. And then just lowering individual income tax rates or just corporate tax rates for their employees too. You know, what's not on here also are, you know, proximity to existing and future clients. Maybe they got a new customer, maybe this supply chain, it just costs so much and they're trying to, again, minimize some of the cost or mitigate some of that. So very brief, and this is, again, I'm going to fly through some of these, but when a company decides that they're going to, you know, try to do a site selection, the first thing they need to figure out, like, they're identifying this project. So is it going to be a brand new location? Is it an expansion of an existing? Then the team will hopefully they'll have a team, they'll develop a concept. I know why are they doing this right now at this point in time? And then, you know, what are some of the strategies behind it? You know, how much is it going to cost versus what's the net return or what's the return on their investment? So then, depending on the type of project, we truly have companies that are looking at the entire world. It's not just the United States, or it's not just the 48 contiguous. It is, sometimes the entire world is available. So when they truly say that, they at that point, that is so much information. So they try to look at, some of my clients will look at existing facilities first to see if there's any excess land or excess capability within the structure of the facilities that they already own or lease. At that point, they'll decide, what do they have to have? What are the go, no go criteria? So if it's for example, if it's a call center, or let's say if it's a data center, they need to know certain ones. And I'll give you an example later on, like, how many natural disasters have they had in the area? Is it close to an earthquake fault line? So again, there's very specific criteria that happens with each project. Then we'll go through an initial qualitative analysis. This helps go down from, it's like a huge funnel. You'd go from like 100 or 1,000 or however many down to 3 to 6, hopefully locations that you can do deeper dives into. At this point, we send out NDAs to the agencies we work with, typically in the government and the state and local economic development agencies. And then we'll do RFPs for additional information for those communities we've down selected to. And then based on that information, we'll do some quantitative analyses. So we have various factors that we determine, that the companies determined are very important. So, and then we'll create scoring models. And a couple slides out, I'll show you a couple of those, or an example of one. And then we try to down select to 2 to 3. So remember, like, again, if we had the entire world to choose from, what we're trying to do is eliminate as many sites that won't fit within our criteria. And we're trying to get it down to 2 or 3 locations so that it's a more manageable population. And at that point, by the time we get to 2 or 3, we're getting to a point where there are so many, like almost every criteria has been met. And so any of these locations down to the 2 or 3 would be viable options for this project at this time. And then at that time, we will do these site visits with the clients. And, this is where we call them boots on the ground. And, we'll actually get a feel for the communities, and we'll visit the real estate, the property, just the whole experience of being on the ground. And then we meet with the state and local officials at that point in time to discuss incentives. And, that way we can determine what the costs are. We'll validate them or make tweaks if something is inaccurate or something has changed. At that point, we'll do a very detailed cost analysis, pretty much everything, soup to nuts, kind of the initial cost if it was a brand new greenfield site that we had to raise, put in all the infrastructure, the pipes, the meters, the everything else, water, sewer, or versus if it's just an office building. We do a full cost analysis. And then, I have some clients in the food industry that they really try to find the return on investment. At what month after they commence operations will they start to see a return? And so we'll get down to, is it 28 months? Is it 12 months? I mean, and they'll determine at that point if that's something that's a viable option based on that. But every, again, company has such different requirements on what's a go, or what will allow this project to move on or pick that location. And at that point, the final incentives negotiations are performed and agreements. And typically at that point in time, we also get final approvals from the local city council or the village board, and a location is determined at that point in time from a company perspective. So some of the criteria that several of my clients use, and these are just examples. There's so many others that are individual and unique to each company. But so labor has lately been some of the most important. I'd say it's in the top 5 on every site selection that we do these days. So it's when we're talking about labor, it's the quality of labor in terms of, do they have the skill set? Do they have the capabilities of, whatever it is your project requires? How much does it cost to hire that workforce? So in certain regions, in certain projects, the average hourly wage is, $10 or $10.50 an hour for a call center. So, we can't go to a community where the average median income is $200,000 because we won't be able to find that kind of workforce. And then the availability of the workforce is really critical, because if you're going into a market that is completely has like nothing of unemployment, has, you know, when like I'd say last year we were getting to the point where communities were boasting that they had 3% or less than 3% unemployment, and that would just wreak havoc, because it's like, okay, well, if we located here and we needed 1,000 people, would we be able to ever fill that workforce? Other criteria, again, business environment. A lot of my clients are looking at, you know, is this a AAA rated state in terms of their budgets and their financials? Illinois gets tossed off the list a lot because we're not. They want to make sure, and the reason that is so critical is because companies, again, are trying to minimize their risk. And if it's a tumultuous state with a lot of just crazy business decisions from either a taxing perspective or just decisions that have been made that have not been pro-business, maybe specifically within that industry, they're going to take that off the list, you know, make sure that that community is not on, or that state. And then, you know, real estate availability, transportation access. I mean, that's really important for companies that have really large, you know, product that they're moving, like if they're doing steel coils and, you know, things that are really expensive to transport. Cost of utilities is really important, specifically in a data center site. And I know Mark Soletto and I, we talked briefly about a year or two ago about, you know, possibly trying to do the CFI as a data center location. But again, it's the service capabilities of it. Do we have enough? Do we have, you know, the redundant capabilities for electricity and power, and, you know, there's other criteria. Proximity to customers and suppliers is critical for especially like a food manufacturing or basically anything at this point, because the last mile, which is the point where it's kind of like your Amazon delivery coming to your door. It's that has become super high, super important now, especially nowadays since we've all been in the pandemic. Quality of life considerations, I typically only see that for office related or headquarter types of operations. And social considerations, that was huge when, you know, I really experienced that, and my clients did also, when North Carolina did a bill called HB2, and it really impacted a lot of my clients, and they took North Carolina off their list at that time. I mean, it is back on again. North Carolina has always been pretty good, but social considerations, decisions that are made at the state and local governments are viewed depending on the company. They will absolutely remove a state from consideration if they determine that they're not socially adaptable to the company's ethics and obligations, basically. So why does this, you know, why is this so important, and why are all these factors so important? Because even within, if it's the same organization, each site selection is going to be different and unique depending on the project. So if I am, you know, ABC Corporation and I happen to manufacture products, so the site selection I'm going to do for a distribution center is going to be completely different than one for a headquarters, and one for a manufacturing plant, or one for a data center. So again, even though it's the same exact company, different criteria will rise to the top for each of those types of projects that I just listed. So when we're talking about these analyses, we're also talking about, and so part of what we're trying to do is figure out pen to paper, or basically Excel modeling out costs, and again, trying to minimize the risk. And so we're going to depend on various factors. Again, that is going to be determined by the company and that project team. And then typically, again, these are some of the factors that I discussed earlier. Again, labor being some of the most important, you know, proximity and utilities. So here's just an example of a quantitative analysis for a data center. And this is hypothetical. So for a data center, and this is unusually high for a data center for 200 employees, but there was a project out there that did this. And they were looking at 500 million of capital investment. Some of their qualifiers were they had to have had less than 2 presidential declared disasters in 10 years, 150 miles from the Washington, D.C. metro area, and greater than 75-acre available site. So these were selected down to these 3. So Utah, North Carolina, and Louisiana. So Salt Lake, Greensboro, and Bossier City. And all of those met them. If any of them said no, they wouldn't have made it down to this last 3 list. For the analog qualifiers, so again, this is kind of a go or no go, the top part that I talked about earlier. So the analog qualifiers below are kind of where we talk about the factors that I'm talking about, and then you assign a weight to each of those factors. So for data centers specifically, you know, utility cost is some of the most important, which is why it's weighted at 35%. And the individual raw scores are performed by the company during their analyses throughout the whole period, and then also sometimes through the site visit as well. And then the workforce availability and quality, obviously that is clearly a critical and important factor in this case, specifically because they needed highly skilled software engineers. So you needed to find a jurisdiction that had enough capabilities or enough people living in the community that had this type of skill set, which is typically determined by, SOC codes that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has available too, and that you can just buy the data. So, and that was weighted at 35%. So then in this one, the business climate, the costs and incentives was weighted at 10%. The customer's preference at that point was rated at 5%. And then the total capital investment, how much it would cost, was weighted at 15. And you can see when you start applying the raw score with the weight, and we multiply it up by 100 because people like to see it out of 100, not out of 10. Then you can see that clearly the site number one, outweighs the other two communities. And again, depending on how people score the raw score, again, this is where your project team is instrumental, because if you gave the same thing to a different project team, perhaps it would score way differently. So that's why, we kind of go through all of these processes. So here's just an example of, and just a snippet of, but we'll do incentives. We'll do the total cost of a project, from the utilities, the total capital investment, and everything. And then we do it for each of the communities that was available. And then we also overlay incentives. And when I talk about incentives, they're basically, in Illinois, we have something called the Illinois EDGE program, which is an income tax credit for newly created jobs that basically it's sort of self-funded. It is not the company, it is not the state giving free money to companies. It is by the company creating new jobs to the state of Illinois. It is the incremental payroll tax withholdings that are generated by the companies hiring these new employees. These income taxes that are generated to the state are then given back to the company at 50%, at 100% back to the company. What do you call it? To use that, I misspoke. So 100% against their tax liabilities, but up to 50% of the total income tax that is generated. So if a company generates, let's say, $10,000 of income, additional income tax withholdings to the state, they might be given $5,000 back to use as an income tax credit against their returns for operating in the state. So that's the type of an incentive that can actually offset the total cost. So in this example, you can't see it, everything's super tiny, but we will we will lay out all of the total costs, and then we'll subtract out all of the incentives, and then we'll do a total cost of doing business after the incentives. Incentives play a role, in Long Grove, we don't really have incentives, and we have a TIF. And again, we don't really use it like other communities do to the extent that I've worked with. But typically incentives are important when we're down to the last three or last two communities and sites. Like I said, at this point, any one of those sites is going to be a perfect fit, or as perfect a fit as can be, based on the analysis that's been performed to that point in time. And incentives will at that point determine, and it'll differentiate the one community from another depending on if there is incentives available. And that can offset costs that are, but then it's not just about the incentives. We do make sure that, we remove out the incentives too, just to see what the total cost of business is without the incentives, because incentives are usually for a finite period of time. So at that point, post the incentives period, is it going to cost more? So I did a project once where the total cost of doing business in the first 10 years was lower in state one versus state two. But after the incentives ran out, state two was much cheaper to operate business. So in the long term, over a 20-year period, state two's total cost of operating business was much better for the company. So they ended up going with state two, even though state one with the incentives looked better in the first 10 years. Every community decision maker or company decision maker, makes that decision at that time, what's going to be more important to them. But some of the incentives that I've worked with, and this is not an all-inclusive list, but there's, cash grants available in certain states. Illinois used to have cash grants maybe like almost 20 years ago. You know, I've seen discounted leases, free land from from communities, tax incentives specifically. So anything related to taxes, we've seen incentives happen from the state and local levels, because sometimes the locals also have a local income tax. Any tax credits related to capital investments, training grants. There's some amazing training programs out there across the country. Georgia, Louisiana, and Virginia are examples of just phenomenal training grant programs that are just invaluable. And then we can also do expedited zoning, expedited permitting, as well as, you know, expedited zoning too, in terms of a review. And then that's something I think we can do, if something that would be beneficial, if we had a big enough, or if we had a project that would be helpful, kind of an ombudsman walking through some of the zoning stuff. And then any state-owned infrastructure, again, we've had locals and states who have offered, you know, infrastructure to do some of the infrastructure, and we just pay them. You know, they will offer it, and then they'll kind of offer it to us for reduced price, or just something that will help move the project along. So now I'm going to talk about some of the office site selection, because, you know, that's something that we can do in Long Grove. So, you know, so when I say office, it's not just corporate headquarters, but there's also back office opportunities, shared service centers, and call centers. And so some of the factors in an office site selection is labor availability and cost, and real estate availability, and then what the business climate is like, and then the incentives that may be offered. Some things that are impactful, first, depending on the office, type of office we're doing. Public transportation, that's key for like call center type of operations where people are not making as much money. So typically they don't own their own public transportation. They don't own their own car. So we have to rely solely on the, you know, the public transportation available. Some of my corporate headquarters require direct flight options into the closest airport, and, you know, proximity to the closest airport. And other headquarter things that typically aren't looked at for other types of office are, you know, it's quality of life stuff. It's museums, the schools, what's the cost of living, what's the housing cost. And then millennial focus has been a lot, you know, kind of the live, work, play kind of things. So the trends that we've seen recently from an office perspective, and I had to modify this to say prior to COVID, millennials really changed the way offices looked, and the office locations and the space that was inside. So here's a configuration of like an old office design, you know, long, huge, you know, really tall. On the left, you can see really tall, like cubicles, and then lots of files and lots of books. Clearly that must've been a law office, because that's just how all the law firms that I've ever worked at look like that. And then the big offices, you know, with the big furniture, the corner office. And, you know, I had, you know, when I used to work in public accounting, you know, at Arthur Andersen, there used to be, we used to have partners that used to fight over, you know, how many ceiling tiles they had. So, you know, with very few meeting rooms. And this was kind of back in the day. This is 20 years ago, let's say. And then this is kind of what the new ones look like. There's a lot more, you know, communal space where they can work together. There's fewer offices, more cubicles. There's no files because everything's digital. And it's kind of and again, this is all pre-COVID. So this is what it looked like, because this is what the millennials demanded. They also demanded they live closer to, or work. They didn't want to travel an hour to get to the office. They wanted to be close to where they work so they can roll out of bed or walk to work, or, you know, not spend half their lives in a car trying to get to work. Now, post-COVID, what we've seen is there's some location changes. We've seen basically that maybe the major metros with the huge office buildings, like the skyscrapers, people aren't really wanting that anymore. I mean, some still will, because COVID will end at some point, but, you know, it is given pause to some of these companies. So now they're focusing on spatial distancing and focusing less on communal space. So here's an example of what Cushman & Wakefield recently did. This is their example of a 6-foot office design space. So you can see that the desks are 6 feet apart. You can see that, you know, they kind of use the circles to visualize and remind people that, you know, this isn't, I mean, you know, some are using plexiglass. And I think in this one, I think there is plexiglass between the 2 cubicles. I don't know if you can see kind of a glare off of it. But this is kind of the change that we're seeing now in office design, because people are, you know, it's, you know, COVID has really freaked everyone out, and rightly so. The other things I talked about, the urbanization of, this is kind of what, this is Greenville, South Carolina. And they've done such a great job with their cute downtowns. They made it live, work, play. Like you can walk across, and on the left over there, there's restaurants as well as residential on top. There's retail underneath. Over to the right, that was like a museum / music hall kind of place. And then if you like kind of, if you're looking at it, so behind them, there's also huge walking trails, and it's in this gorgeous little area. And that's the kind of thing that millennials are really looking at, which is why, and Greenville is super cute. They've got a great, just a great, if you've not been there, that is one place that you should absolutely look at. It's absolutely phenomenal. And it's really grown over the last several years. So that's just kind of it. So I will take questions if that's a lot to digest, but anyone have any questions? Otherwise, again, very brief primer. I tried to fly through that. Otherwise, and I think we're done. I'm like, so that's all I had. I'm like, unless someone had questions.
Well, the thing that struck me is that you're talking, when I teach law and I teach about corporations, one of the things that I tell my students is, in the world of corporations, there are really two worlds. There's the world of the Xeroxes and the Apples, and then there's the world of the Mina Hall LLC, or, and those sets of parameters and those concerns are very different from. So what you're looking at is, what we're looking at with your presentation is the kind of thing that any village would love to have, a nice, big, stable, around for 20 decades. And we should look for that and think about that in what we do, but also a lot of what we've got in terms of opportunity, I think, faces the smaller market. And I don't know how we shift gears, or if we even need to shift gears.
Well, and that's very valid. And Roger, totally, you're on point. I mean, this is what site selection does from a large company perspective, right? So this is what a large company made. Right, you're right. The Xerox, the IBMs of the world way back in the day, right? So part of this is, I'm trying to show you that this is what companies, and just because they're small, that doesn't mean they're not looking at certain factors. They want a stable workforce, they want a good community that, but they also want to know that their workforce that they can get. So when I was saying is, we have, and when we talked about this, 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago,
Yeah.
The two things that we wanted to focus on was retail and commercial, and commercial falls with it. Retail falls within commercial. So commercial activity. And so that is all I think that we are capable of. We're never going to have huge manufacturing because we just don't have the workforce for it. We don't have, we're not going to have huge distribution centers because we don't have our access to local, just local interstates again, and just proximity from a huge, if 53 came in, that might have been a different thing, but stuff like that. But for us to focus, so this is where the demographics things that I'm working on with Pam and we'll forward to J2, we're trying to focus on the things that we are going to be good at. But I'm telling you I was trying to show you from a bigger picture what companies can look at or will look at. They may not do the whole kit and caboodle, but they will be looking at the labor. They will be looking at the demographics of the labor as well as the community itself, right? And what real estate is available, how much it's going to cost. I think for us, the office spaces that are available, I think right now the rents that they're trying to get are not necessarily the rents they should be asking for, quite possibly, from what we've heard, which may be another reason why things aren't flying. We have to be realistic with what's out there and what's the goal? Do we want to move property or not? And that's kind of, I don't know, but I think for us to start is to put labor demographic information, or just demographics in general. And then in order to target the retail operations, grab the try to do the drive time. I think drive time is going to be better than miles, because I think that's just an easier way for people to, again, I'm trying to do, the website for us is going to target people that aren't using consultants like me, that they are doing their own research. So I think the information that Pam and I are trying to work on will help that. Hopefully people will say, oh, look, there's this, I can reach 20,000 people in 15 minutes. That's the kind of thing we're trying to do.
Mina, thank you so much. That I found that really, really interesting. And you just hit the nail on the head, because I'm thinking there's a lot of small mom and pops that can't hire a Mina. And I think that information, think of me like, oh, I want to open a restaurant in downtown Long Grove. I've never opened a restaurant. I have nowhere to start. But having a website that has some of these things that I haven't even thought about and kind of helping me think, I think that's such a service to any small business that wants to come to Long Grove. So my eyes are opened. I thought that was really interesting. I'm not a business person, so I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. No, and I think if we can, once we can figure, too bad we can't get data of how far people drive when the restaurants are open again in the future. Maybe like, oh, would you be willing to say what zip code you're coming from? Just to see if we can try to collect some of that data. That would just be so fascinating to see. And again, I think the sales tax information is something that's going to be critical for future retail operations like a Menards or, something else, just to see.
Right.
And, Jay's always mentioned rooftops, which is one of the most critical factors in retail is rooftops. And we by ourselves don't have enough critical mass to get big, the big Cracker Barrels of the world, unfortunately, but anyway.
Well, I think we're framing what we're doing in a smart way, in the sense that we're just not saying, here are the criteria that people look at and here's our data. We're also going to the relatively naive new business entrepreneur and going, if you're doing it, this is what you should be looking at. So there's a little bit of education in what we're doing as well. I think that's tremendous if we do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Mina, your presentation was excellent. There's a lot we can take from that because, we don't have certain things, but, some things you pointed out that we can work to our advantage, like expedited zoning, for example, like an ombudsman to help people through the process, assistance with infrastructure. There's a lot that's possible there. And, I think between that and the demographic information we can pull, I think we can make a story that's very positive for us, which is what we have to do.
I agree, Pam. I think the outline the flow chart that Mike's been working on, I think that's the first step. And I think that is going to help part of that process because we do lay out the zoning process there. If anything, at that point, I would also like to see how many days or weeks in order to get certain things done or passed or required for timing. I think that would also be helpful. But yeah, if we can help a roadmap specifically for office and specifically for restaurants or retail, I think we can do, we can help people that are, again, smaller businesses. I was trying to give you an overview of what big businesses do, but we can use that and collapse that down for a smaller business for sure.
Also, we
I
do.
thought it was an excellent presentation, Mina. It was really, really good. I had a couple of questions. I had a video problem with my laptop, so I'm phoned in. But just a couple thoughts. Do you think non-home rule plays in when you talked about incentives, and I think about employee retention and other things? That tax burden predictability and there not being a local tax, I'm wondering if that might be something. And I'd be interested in your thoughts on, if you had to identify the top 3 characteristics of effective municipalities that you've interacted with, because I think when you talk about process, the streamlined process and those sorts of things, I think those really resonate, and those are things we can work on. And then the last idea was in boiling the ocean down. I wonder if there's any kind of either regulatory or where there's requirements of contiguous borders or having an office in a particular state to be able to operate in that state. I know healthcare from a licensing standpoint has a lot of that. So you see a lot of pop-up, either storefronts or operations that select a particular area. And where Long Grove is positioned relative to all the very well-developed, communities all around us, that maintaining a contiguous transportation hub, if you will, between different areas seems like that might be a benefit. I guess I'm just thinking about what things that we're maybe not in control of that could be, flipped into benefits from a site selection standpoint.
I was just going to say, I think the not having our own. Okay, so let me think of the positives first. So we do have the sales. We have the sales tax generated from the TIFs, right? We have the property taxes generated from the TIFs, assuming that we ever go into the black, right? Like that is something that, and typically the additional tax revenues generated from property and sales taxes in a community is what drives a lot of the incentives that we talked about. That's something that we don't really have. That is within our control, but obviously that's something that that the trustees have never wanted to move forward with, right? From a property tax perspective. So we only have the sales tax. And I think at this point in time, the numbers are good, but not as good as we'd hoped or wanted to be one day in the future. So from what we can or cannot do, I think that does have an impact a little bit, just from an incentives perspective and things that we can do as a community to keep, money makes money kind of thing. But that aside, you had so many questions on that one, Mike. I'm trying to think of the other ones. What other ones did you say that I wanted to address?
The top three characteristics of those municipalities that you walk away saying, well, gosh, they really have their act together and they had this streamlined. It was really good working with them.
So they have really good demographic information. They have really good, and that targeted towards the industries that they're targeted towards. So for us, it should be office, retail, /restaurants, right? In which case the information, again, Jay has stressed over and over, number of rooftops. We're never going to get there just as Long Grove, but that's why I'm hoping when I put some of these together with overlaying like a 15-30 minute drive time. If I have to drive from a certain point myself, I will and figure out how far that goes. But I think we can try to get more rooftops that way. And I think that'll help. And maybe maybe we could do like a little slide for, hey, restaurant owners, here's the top 3 things you should look at, rooftops, how many restaurants we currently have in Long Grove, types of restaurants, maybe they can see what types of restaurants we don't have. Maybe that can be new or different for them to open. And then from a retail perspective, we can do, hey, these are how many retail, retail stores we have right now in Long Grove, and kind of list out or individually categorize them by what it is. And then office, we could do the same thing. And then we can also say, this is what's available from a real estate and try to tie that into that, or just embed that link that we have from real estate. And then that would be so the labor demographics and just demographics in general, drive times, that's going to be most important for us. I think from the second thing would be the Mike Elliott, the flow chart, just the kind of what's the process. But from what I would love to see is how many days it'll take to actually go through each of the processes. By the time I talk to the village manager, then the next step, it's 3 days, then it's a week, then it has to be 3 weeks or whatever. People are trying to, again, put everything down and minimizing risk. They don't want to be going into a year from now and still waiting for zoning improvement. Do you know what I mean? So from that, that's where we could be business friendlier, because we have that reputation that we're not business friendly. So that's the second thing. And I think the third thing is just to have, I think we just need, we need to showcase what we do have, which I think the Historic Downtown Long Grove Business Association does well. But that's just downtown. What about like the Sunset Groves? What about there are different pockets of retail that don't get the love that, again, that's their own little group. It's not Long Grove, the village of, they have their own little merchants association, which none of these other ones necessarily do or have as much or aren't as visible or vocal. If we can try to help them, but I think that's how we can help us to be more attractive to businesses that come. And if there's a way to show, and again, sales tax information, I mean, again, I don't think that's going to help us. In this case, it'll probably hurt us because our two biggest sales tax people are Menards and Sunset, right? But just to try to show them that businesses are viable and doing well here, I think that would be something that, again, I'm throwing lots of information out there, but I would love to see that. If I'm not hiring me and I'm a small business and I want to open up my own little tchotchke shop, that's kind of what I would want to see, I think.
Yeah. And so, you know, back on the other point that you raised relative to data center and availability, I'm wondering if there are other things in surrounding areas that are fact, are already out there. For example, south of into Cook County and south into DuPage, there's a plethora of data center capacity in that, but virtually nothing from Lake Cook Road all the way up to Wisconsin. And, you know, it's been identified that there are a number of, particularly with what was supposed to happen with Foxconn and everything else, up, you know, just north of the border into Wisconsin, that data center, either the mega sites or even microsite, were being explored in this whole area. And I'm just wondering with, you know, Long Grove where it is, leveraging our location, our specific location as a hub or a node in a very, you know, developing and or, you know, so for some of these particular types of businesses, maybe it's the perfect location, not due to any magic that we did, but just being situated where we are and where the demand is for those kinds of consumers. Maybe those are some of the trends that we could look into too as well. So we're a bit more targeted relative to who we're and what it is we're trying to attract. And the idea with the data center was if it leveraged into a telecommunications tax benefit to the village, it was a fairly significant, you know, opportunity to the bottom line.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's those kinds of things too that are strategic, like you had in the first half of your presentation. I thought it was excellent. Getting a better understanding of that and having EDC maybe pull the thread on a couple of those items, if those are real opportunities for Long Grove or not, would be, I think, something worth thinking about.
Yeah, I agree. I like your ideas, Mike. Now just executing on them.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and you know, as we're saying, Mina, you know, to emphasize what we do have, what we can control, you know, which is, you know, presenting the best demographic picture we can, you know, with the idea of income and education of the population and things things that put a good face on our community, as well as other things we have, you know, creating a business climate like we're talking about that's more friendly, and you know, even our proximity, like you were saying, Mike.
Did we lose Pam? Oh, okay.
You know what may be a good idea, just throwing a thought out there, maybe perhaps this inspires some action items, you know, associated with more of a strategic view of where we're trying to go with both the packaging of Long Grove as an attractive target from Mina's perspective in a locating, you know, sort of perspective. And then number two, that's the external, and then maybe the internal on what business work processes within the village could stand to be improved from that perspective. You know, streamlining, fast track, a regulatory all lined up, you know, on the top 3 to 5 types of businesses that we're trying to attract. Maybe those are the two actions that would be valuable moving forward.
I was thinking in terms of taking a look at the bullet points that Mina had at the outset and ranking those in terms of where Long Grove stands. You know, our strengths, our weaknesses, of the points that they look at, which, if any of those, are we strong on? I've I can't remember us ever having that kind of an explicit discussion. And maybe at the next meeting, just putting those bullet points up there and having a talk and trying to rank those. Somebody's grandkid is on.
Hey, like a Long Grove SWOT, a SWOT
Yes.
analysis for Long Grove
Yes.
from a business perspective. How about that?
Yes. I think that'd be a worthwhile exercise for a meeting.
Well, I think
You bet.
I think that when we do working sessions, we've gotten a lot of stuff done when we
Yeah.
have done working sessions as an E2C. So I'd be all for that.
All right. Let's.
I'll participate too. I'd love to.
I consider you still part of it, Mike. So
Yeah, I'm like your 10th member without being a member, 9th member, whatever you got there.
A very valuable member.
All the gain, none of the pain. That's right.
Well, you get me without having to burn an actual seat on the commission, see, so it's a benefit, hopefully.
it is.
Yeah, we should find some title for you just to, give you officio de facto something or another.
Actually, I don't think I was ever formally part of the EDC.
Head
Right?
cheerleader, I
Ever.
think. Yeah.
I suspect everybody's very glad that you're here.
Yeah.
Anything else on Mina for now, at least? We can go forward with this.
Wonderful job, Mina. Thank you very, very much.
Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Yeah,
Any other
sorry.
new business?
Appreciate it.
So I know we probably don't have time now because it's 8:30, but maybe next time I do want to kind of go back to some of the things that you sent an email, Roger, last week about the outcome of the trustees, kind of our role, as well as the whole thing related to marijuana. Because I have opinions about both of those things that I think we as an EDC should probably discuss, especially the marijuana thing. But yeah, I think we don't have time today, but can we make sure we talk about that next time?
Definitely, we can keep that on our radar. I suspect the more will develop on that this evening at the village board meeting. But yeah, definitely, let's. And there are a couple of other things that are in the wings that have recently surfaced that we should be talking about, thinking about. One is the CFI, the Salem Lake development, is apparently heating up. They have a sign up on 22, so they're actively looking, and I guess there's a meeting scheduled for later this week with the village manager and the village planner to talk to them about what's going on out there and where it's going. My God.
I'm never up for these meetings, but I thought, oh, well,
All right.
you know,
Well, if Erwin can have his grandkids, I guess I can have my wife's.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy whatever holidays.
So anyway, that's on the table, and there's some developments with MATS in terms of they're looking for some help with development up there that the EDC may get involved with. That's interesting. So stay tuned for more developments on both of those. Anybody else have any?
I just wanted to clarify. So when I talked to Silit, the accountants, we're just wanting to put a link to their information on our website, or do we want to actually hijack their information and put it on our website?
I think we should do a
They
link.
want to show that they're experts on our website.
Okay.
That's great, but Erwin, I think a link would do it for us probably, wouldn't it?
Syndicated, I think it might be a word to use.
And you're breaking up, Erwin. Bill, what did you say?
You know, I think of a word called syndication. So it's kind of what we're looking at. I want to connect to it. So use their content.
Thank you.
Well, I think Jenny, just describe to them what it is we're trying to do. We have businesses downtown that have been through PPP. They've been through EIDL. They've been through, you know, a number of different processes. Sometimes it gets complicated, you know, whatnot. Timeliness and relevancy of information, being current on it, is important to not only our businesses, but to the village at large. We're wondering how our relationship with Thicket could help improve communication and information relevancy currently to the village in that regard.
Need a charger?
Hey, Mike, I already reached out to Dan Berg. That's why Jenny's asking, because he had some questions. So, yeah.
Do you,
Are those gonna work?
oh my gosh.
There's a lot of background noise. I didn't hear you, Bill.
I already reached out to Sickich, so he's already responded that quickly. So.
Oh, so you already
Okay, good.
talked to him about it? So it's on.
So there's an email chain. All you got to do is pipe in.
Okay.
And if you want to have Erwin add him to it, that's fine. I think that would be good as well.
Okay.
That's great.
Perfect. Great. Okay.
Thanks.
Hey, Bill, did you put me on that email exchange?
No, I can if you want.
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I have to sign off. So everyone have a great holiday.
You too, Erwin.
Okay.
See you next year.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of the year, everybody.
That's right.
You too, everyone.
We get to do that one this time. All right. Motion to adjourn,
I move to adjourn.
second.
I second.
Second.
There we go. Any opposed? Didn't think so. All right. We're formally adjourned, and now everybody have a great holiday, a safe holiday, and come back next year with lots of energy. We're going to get interesting things done.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Happy
Okay.
2021.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good holiday.